Welcome back to Spearfactor. Today we have Dr. Kelsey Albert. Um, if you don't know of her, you probably should, just based on her accomplishments and how long she's been doing this for a while. And I kind of want to talk to her a little bit about, like, to get a female perspective of, because she's been doing it for so long, the growth in the sport, and see how that interacts or just, I guess, impacts uh, being a female, trying to, in a sport. I don't really call it a sport, but in a recreational activity, lifestyle, whatever. Mainly dominated by men. So there's that, and then I want to talk to her about our world records too. I'm kind of curious about that. I heard the Wahoo story, but just recently saw the first Denmark, the cod, I think, right? Is that what you shot?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Can you give, not necessarily your own personal background, but just your personal background as far as getting involved in spearfishing and the lifestyle and the culture that kind of existed uh, for women when you got involved?
Okay, so um, as you already know, I was born and raised in Virginia, but my mom being in the Navy, we were all over the place. And I've always had strong roots in California with most of my family out there. And we were back and forth a lot as a kid. I was very close to being enrolled in Huntington Beach High School. Um, so I just always felt like I was kind of back and forth between two different coasts, right? But I've always identified more with the West Coast in terms of just general vibe, but even though it has changed a lot since I was a kid, for sure. Um,
100%. Yeah.
yeah, and there's things about Virginia I absolutely, of course, love the people, but there's some things about that part of the country too that also made me leave, especially in terms of the spearfishing opportunities and also, of course, my career. That was the driving force of me returning back to California. Um, and, that's so I had always looked at spearfishing as like, I was working on my master's degree and it's the sport I wanted to get into for years. And, I used to, I used to like catch fish in Virginia with a frog gig. Like I would go out as a kid and I would like put a frog gig on like a broomstick or anything long, like a long stick that I could find, and I would try and like shoot eels in the creek. So that was
Nice.
that's kind of where it got started when I was a young kid. And then it was sort of this dream I always had when I was in school and I was looking out of the window and everybody else is having fun and I'm just stuck in my books, right? Um, and then I stayed in California to work on my doctorate, and along the way, I originally came to California, got a job immediately in the stem cell research field after completing my master's. And spearfishing was just this fun little hobby on the side. And
I'm sorry, what was your master's in? I'm just curious.
oh, stem cell engineering and
Oh,
molecular
okay.
biology. Yeah, I'm a nerd, super nerd. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's
Like closet
okay.
Trekkie and super nerd.
All right. Hey, own it. It's all
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Well, look, you can either be a nerd or work for one in these days, so choose.
That's a good point.
So, um, but yeah, I'm just spearfishing just was this amazing social break from work, you know, along the way. And I really love the diversion it gave me from city life. I've always been a country girl. Whether your country is defined as the ocean or the open spaces or the woods, country is country.
That's a,
So,
Doc, that's a super good point. Like, you mentioned that, and I had just said that to somebody else, and I was talking about, like, stressors when,
yeah.
when you go out you go out, there's that, what is it, 48-hour nature detox or something like that. But when you go out into, you go to Baja, you go anywhere, even in the desert, you just get away from people, and it's just and the stress, I think it's like a reset for your brain. And I was saying that, when you go offshore, it's the exact same feeling that you get where it's just openness and like whatever it is that like mental toxins in your body, they just kind of go away, and it's that break. It's so funny that you mentioned that.
Mhm. So yeah, it just became a, it was a perfect fusion of all of my interests. I growing up in two different kinds of country, both like beaches as well as forests and swamps and woods. It combined my love of swimming as well as hunting. And I mean, gosh, there is no better fusion of those two things. And I really love, especially as a sports med doc, I am a big fan of knowing where my food comes from. I'm kind of a nutrition geek, and I like to know exactly how all of my meat was killed, whether it's from a land animal or a fish or a bird. I really take a lot of pride and enjoyment in hunting my own food and cooking it for my family.
Right. Well, let's get into that. So when you talk about you want to know where your meat comes from,
Yeah.
what are the things that, like, we talk about, like, I guess farm fish and all this stuff like that, and that's obviously fish, but what are the things that you look for that are kind of like your own little moral code or your own preferred ways of killing animals or farming them or
So that's a very interesting question. Um,
sorry,
it's, it,
it wasn't really in the notes, sorry.
no, that's fine. So that is a very great question, and I could probably write a thesis on it. Every hunter um, has their own preference. Me personally, and I don't force my preferences on others. I encourage people, but I don't shame them for not sharing mine, because everybody has to make their own choices in life. Personal accountability, and part of that, a huge part of personal accountability is respect. So, especially when I take an intelligent animal like a deer, and especially a pig, you know, it's all too easy to see the animals we hunt as, well, it's just my next Instagram photo. But that animal, especially pigs, they have emotions, they have feelings, they care for their young. Their mothers defend their young, and you have to respect that. Pigs are known to be highly intelligent. So when you take something that has almost sentience, it's aware of its own existence, whether or not we can prove that in labs or not, it's a very smart animal. You really should respect it. And I don't see a fish as too different. For example, when I hunt a sea bass, I treat that thing with the same exact respect that I would if I'm shooting a deer. I don't want to see it suffer too long. I want to kill it as quickly as possible, not only because the meat tastes better, but because it's a better thing to do as a person. And that's something that I set, it's a standard that I set for myself, and I do encourage others, because that fish is not points. We assign points to trophies. It was a living creature that God put on this earth, and it should be respected.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more on that. Excuse me. Yeah, and again, the bottom line is, I think, is respect too. I mean, these animals die so that you can live, right? Like,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
and it's nothing personal. They didn't try to sleep with your wife or anything. So why would you show them disrespect? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's funny because you mentioned pigs, and pigs, any mammal really is a higher level of intelligence.
Mhm.
um it's always a little weird. And personally for me, yeah, I mean, hunting pigs and uh hearing, I'm not going to sit there and call anybody out because I love wild pig and all of that stuff like that, but it was a little rough to hear the thing screaming and all of that. And
Yeah.
I mean, call me soft or whatever, but I have no personal vendetta or anything against that animal. I'd prefer instantly just snap my fingers and it dies, and then moving on. And I think a lot of people actually feel that way. I don't think it's anything unique you or I or a lot of people, which is why when you think about it, like I know Mark Healy and a couple other friends of mine, where they hunt an animal, and then there was a small a baby or whatever you want to call it, a calf or whatever with that animal, and they take it and they raise it out of a respect thing. Um, so yeah, I forget the term for that. It's pretty, but yeah. So it's a good point. Octopus is another big one for me. Um,
Okay.
yeah, my good friend said to me one time, he was like, "Yeah, I prefer not to hunt animals that if they had thumbs, I can play chess with." And and again, not condemning anybody because it's delicious. But yeah, so it's my own little moral code. I'm like, I'll live if I don't eat a octopus or anything like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, um, that's a good point. So like, as far as like farm raised, do you have any preference as far as, because you talk about being really into nutrition, as far as farm raised fish or wild caught, and I guess every species is a little different too. Do you have any
Yeah.
feelings or thoughts on that?
I have a lot of feelings and thoughts, but but mostly thoughts because I don't guide my like I guide myself in life through instinct, but I also am a very scientific mind. I think more with my brain with certain issues. And logically, we all know a lot of farm fish around the world, it's hard to generalize all farm fish. But in general, I avoid farm fish. However, there are some farm fish industries that do it in a way that is sustainable and not toxic. So, I mean, it's a loaded question, but I prefer to mostly eat wild fish, game.
Right.
But if I were to buy farmed fish that, like something I couldn't go out and immediately hunt, I try to source it from industries that do practice sustainable fishing. For example, let's just take farm salmon. Different countries around the world farm salmon differently. Some do it better than others. Um, some are advertised to be sustainable, but the more you research them, the more you find out that, you know what, I might as well be eating a dog poop burger. Farmed tilapia from Asia doesn't rank very high on my list, obviously. But then when you buy farm, no, it does not. And when you buy farmed salmon, really research how those fish were raised and what food they're eating. For example, in Norway, some of the stuff I read about the farm salmon up there is not very good. For every 1 pound of salmon produced, they have to kill 2 pounds of cod, and that's not good.
Right.
So, um, and then you look at places like the Faroe Islands, a Danish territory, they they source their salmon meal from local bait fish, so they have less toxin concentration and they enrich it with oils. So then when that salmon, you can ask sushi chefs about the quality difference and they'll tell you straight up, yeah, I'll buy Canadian salmon or Chilean or Faroese salmon, but I won't buy so and so salmon. So sometimes reading sushi reviews can give you a lot of information about farm fish industries and which is a better choice.
And have you noticed anything different? Like, you're in Denmark now,
Mm,
correct? Yeah. So have you
part
noticed
part
anything?
time,
Okay. Yeah. Have you noticed
seasonal.
anything different as far as the attitude or the mindset towards fishing in general, and eating fish or hunting wild animals and all of that, compared to like in the States? Are they like more informed over there, or are they less, so they don't even think about it? Or
Well, so there's a lot of ways I could answer that question.
sorry,
In
it's another
terms,
loaded question, I guess.
it's fine. I'll take them. Okay, so in Northern Europe, it's hard to lump everybody in the same box because Northern Europe includes some Scandinavian countries and it includes some countries outside of the EU. like Norway is not in the EU. And it also has some countries that they just have completely different cultural beliefs, even though they're right next to each other. For example, in Norway, they actually still kill whales. And I don't mean just a few of them, I'm talking hundreds of them every year. And that's not a secret. And you can go to like the Bergen seafood market and you can purchase whale sausage, smoked whale. You can go to most markets in Norway and purchase whale meat. It's something they still do up there. And you know, they they sell it commercially. They don't just harvest it for their own people. They sell it to Japan and God knows who else. So their values about, you know, what they take from the ocean do differ greatly from us. Where if I were to post something on Facebook where, oh, I ate, you know, whale sausage today, I'd probably lose about 3,000 of my American friends.
That's okay.
So,
So right
you
along
know what
those
I'm
same,
saying? Like,
yeah, I know what you're saying because I had
yes.
a guest. I'm not going to even mention any names or anything because we were talking off the record, and or I may have edited it out, and I laughed. I said, "Well, I think you just lost like you know X amount of followers." And
Yeah,
so my question would be though, if you know what we were talking about earlier, if
yeah,
let's say Norway they had like hunting permits for whales or whatever, and they were
yeah,
able to kill them, hunt them and kill them basically as more, I guess, as humanely as possible, right? Like just lights out, like
yeah.
if you do a stone shot or something on a fish. Would you have different? Would you have a different feeling about it, or other than like they corral them in the coves and then just slaughter them?
So the cove thing, that's something you will see on the Faroe Islands in Japan.
Uh-huh.
In Norway, they do it a bit differently.
Okay.
Um, you know, whales occupy a special place in my heart because they are sentient beings. They are extremely intelligent, and there's so much about them that we just don't know. But they, you know, they are not a fish, and but people regard them like they regard farmed pigs. And they argue that it's very sustainable and that you can actually, you know, that there's a high degree of traceability, you know, versus like, you know, say tracing a cow from a farm in Texas or something.
Uh-huh.
So I have mixed thoughts about that, but personally, and especially as a female, females in general should not be consuming that kind of meat if they have an abundance of other choices. You know, the level of heavy metals in those animals is extremely toxic. And if you want to have kids in 5 years that don't have three eyes, I'm it's just you can make better
No.
choices.
Yeah,
It's
100%.
not we don't live in the Viking age anymore. We just don't. And um we have so many other food options available to us now that it's pretty draconian to continue that practice. However, I'm not a member of Sea Shepherd. I'm not a member of any of these groups that go to these places and terrorize and tell people what to do. I'm not going to force my cultural beliefs on somebody else.
Right.
But,
I
you
have a
know,
pretty strong opinion about that stuff too. And I have
yeah,
some funny stories about, I mean, coming from someone who worked exclusively with bottlenose dolphins for 12 years, 5 days a week,
yeah,
same thought, you know. Um, yeah, and it's interesting too because one of the arguments is, you know, for some, you know, Norway, for some of the people in the region is like that's their livelihood, and understand all of that, you know.
yeah,
What else? What other option, right? Like we just had that where it was like, you know, the whole thing, not to get political at all, but it was like, hey, we're going to get rid of the pipeline jobs. They'll get new jobs. And so you can't take away one thing and not provide something else for someone. Otherwise they'd either go underground or who knows, like, or suffer.
correct.
Yeah. So it's definitely a complicated issue too. And you put yourself in other people's shoes sometimes. And I think that you realize there's not this devil behind it.
No,
It's a merely either people just don't know or they don't have another option, you know?
yeah. On that note,
Yeah.
may I
Sorry, let's move
share?
on because
No, no, no. I just
no, go
actually
ahead.
I have something beautiful to share with you. So All right, so especially coming from California and the United States, we have very strong views and feelings for whales, right? Whales and dolphins.
Right.
Um, those are American values that we don't kill these creatures. We have federal laws that protect a lot of marine mammals. Well, in Scandinavian countries, many of them, you can shoot seals, you can shoot
Right. I know
uh,
that. Yeah. You can eat. Yeah. Yeah.
you can eat just about. They don't have the same federal national protection for their animals because of their cultural traditions. And it wasn't until I actually traveled to this region, and especially um, to other Danish territories and other Scandinavian countries, where I spent time with a whaler's family and got to see like some of the harpoons that he shaped with his own hands, from
Right.
the metal slip tip to how he rigged it. And I just appreciated the thought and engineering that went into that harpoon. And it struck me that this man was not a monster, even though he did some things that would emotionally trigger a lot of people.
Right.
But it was so healthy for me to travel and actually, not be afraid to have these discussions with people that do go against my cultural upbringing, and also to treat them with respect, because that's their cultural traditions, and I have zero place telling them what to do. They have to make that decision for themselves.
Yeah. That's another great point. And I think it goes back to respect, seeing someone,
Hmm.
the nurture, like the care it takes and the thought it went into it. Um, I don't think if you have to go through all that, they're not taking it lightly. And then the other side is too, I mean, it's very easy for someone else, and we hear it all the time, uh, say, how can you murder those fish? And, I'd like to shoot you. I've gotten that before. That was pretty awesome.
Oh,
Um,
I've gotten those threats too.
yeah. Hey, you're welcome to come by. You'll probably lose, but it's all right.
Exactly.
Um, yeah. But yeah, so it's so interesting to say that. And I've heard other arguments from a friend of mine. I'm the apex predator on this planet. So I'll, no disrespect, but if I gotta eat, I'm gonna eat. And I understand that theory too. It all just goes back to, again, like exactly what you said, like respect. And everybody has their own moral code, and it's your moral code. It doesn't mean everybody else. It's like when you travel the world and you see all these different cultures, and you realize, I like this about this culture, I don't like this about this culture.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
it's like, no, I'm not prejudiced or racist. I just, about whatever culture it is, I just prefer to go to these areas because I identify culturally, and my value system is similar to these people here. So I just
Right.
prefer to go there.
Hmm.
I spent a lot of time in the Middle East, and then a lot of time, and just other parts of the world. And it was really interesting to learn that obviously, like, the best education you can get is just traveling, because you
Exactly.
realize, yeah, these people aren't this way or this way. And you can see how the culture kind of develops based on um, the environment, how the environment has shaped their culture for survival,
Yeah.
the terrain, like, yeah, and the local food source and all this stuff. We had a question one time when I was in college, and it was like our final, and it was like, describe these 5 civilizations and how uh, the terrain, the religion, it was like 5 different things. The land or whatever it was, I don't remember. So I guess it's terrain, but how it shaped their culture and how it developed. And I always remember that question, because as I go places, I can see, like, for example, in the Middle East, everybody wears the covering or the things sometimes, and it's because when you go over there, you realize it is so dusty,
Oh yeah.
fine, silty dust. Yeah. And it's like, oh, that makes sense. Like, because we do that when we go over there. Like, it makes sense. So it's always interesting to hear that stuff. And it's good. I think it's a good discussion to everybody kind of like put it in neutral and just take a step back and think about something first. Um, and I think the one way you can fight with stuff, I guess you can, try to change things, is just make people aware of it. And then legislation, I guess. But then also provide alternate, ulterior motives, like ulterior, gee, I can't even speak today. Um, Additional, like, ways for them to survive. It's,
Exactly.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
another great example I look at it is like prostitution, right? You look at these people, and I go, you know what though? It's how unfortunate for someone that that's their only option. But I have a lot of respect for them that they're willing to do whatever it takes to survive. Where they could be standing on a street corner panhandling, but they're not. They're standing on a street corner doing else. But hey, regardless, um, you know, the the will to survive or do whatever it takes to get the job done. Like I do respect that in any facet. Like, you know, um, do I think it's healthy? No, but
Yeah.
again, I'm not going to judge anybody in any mistakes. If anyway, we all help each other out and try to just learn from each other.
Yeah.
But
So speaking of mutual
yes,
learning,
yes,
so even though they have some values in this part of the world that do differ greatly from ours,
uh-huh.
humans, I've watched, I don't like I don't like talking about politics too much, but I can't help but as I get older be more and more interested that it's really funny that the dichotomies that exist in this world where it's very easy to, you know, like we as Americans get judged by the rest of the world for our values, right?
Oh,
But
100%. Yeah.
every time we are judged, there's usually a few more fingers pointing back at the judger, right? So,
Correct.
for for example, like especially on environmental issues or sustainability, but the longer I live here, I'm like, you know what? They got some issues that they really should focus on themselves before they point the finger at us, and also vice versa. That's fair. So, you know, like I guess I can compare Denmark and Norway. Denmark does not have they have some extremely strict environmental laws. You know, these people really do care about climate change, they care about the environment, going green. It's a big thing here. It's fashionable here. Most European countries are that way. Yet, Norway is still one of 5 countries in the world that still dumps their mining waste in their fjords. Here we have a country that's banning all vehicles that are not electric. Okay, they have some of the highest gas prices in the world, highest taxes in the world. They're climate change this, climate change that, we are eco-friendly, blah blah blah. But they still dump their heavy metal mercury mining waste in their fjords because who cares who has to fish them, right? And they just think that this stuff doesn't just leak out in time and that fish don't absorb it.
Yeah. What's the
So
logic behind that? Have you talked to any Norwegians about that?
a lot of them, it is like one of these dark secrets that nobody's proud of and few people want to have a discussion about. Like, I'm going to just speak like bluntly and salty. I hear so much. I'm beyond caring at this point.
Yeah, I
I
get it.
as an
Oh,
American, I've heard so much salt from the people in this part of the world about how bad Americans are about stuff. I was like, yeah, but let's have a discussion about what you guys are doing. And there's the emotional trigger, and then there's no more logical conversation to be had because nobody wants to talk about their own dirty laundry because they're not proud of it.
well, I
But
think that's the
what are they?
problem with
Yeah,
everyone. Everyone.
everyone,
It's like,
everyone has
hey,
this.
I don't care what your view is if you have some facts, because I would say like
Yeah,
it's an opinion, right? And it's opinion based on your own experiences, and those experiences are kind of facts for you because they did exist,
right.
and that's okay. So someone could look at whoever someone chose for for someone voted for totally different based on their situation, their
Hmm.
job, and everything else. It doesn't make someone, so it's crazy to me how you're like, okay, well, why do you feel this way? And then they're like, I just feel this way. I'm like, well, no, I don't. Give me some, like, I'm willing to listen. I love to hear like some actual thinking with the brain instead of the heart, because that does happen, and it's not I mean, I understand people like that,
Yeah,
but I had the
but
same
I think.
experience in Australia too.
Oh yeah.
with with my Aussie friends, and they just give you shit all the time for being an American, and they're like, you're like giving a shit about being racist or something, and I kind of laugh.
Oh,
I
that's
go,
the best
I go,
part, right?
I go, dude, really? Like 19 up in the like what, that 60s or something? You could shoot I considered wildlife Aborigines, bro. And Yeah, it was actually funny just for everybody to air our own shit out. Like, it's not a
Mhm.
big deal. We all have ways to improve. But again, like you
Exactly.
said, yeah, when you're pointing the finger, like, make sure your own backyard is nice and clean before you talk shit about mine. Like, um,
Exactly.
I'll
Or,
own it. I'll own it. We got our problems for sure, but hey, I think
oh
we're
yeah,
doing all right.
like you know what? We'll be just fine. We always are. And, you know, nobody has a perfect government, nobody has a perfect world, but unless we should all love it anyway. You should always love where you come from, because the only
Right,
way it's going to get better is if you continue to love it. But the more time you spend judging other people, that's less time you spend loving what you have, focusing on improving something always. And
right.
so as an American, it can be a funny place to live in Northern Europe. There's some things I absolutely really love about this place, but I am only here seasonally. Okay.
Yeah.
I consider myself a patriot. I am a red-blooded American, and I am unapologetically proud of my country.
Yeah,
And so I really am. And that you know what? Having pride in my country will also get you judged in other places in the world, especially even in the world of spearfishing. I have run into so many people traveling that hated me just because of my flag. And I'm like, hold on, bro. I mean, what? Just because you don't like the dude in charge of my country right now, how come we can't be friends? We're in the same sport, you
right,
know? And I will never understand why people have to be that way. But hopefully in time, those people will mature and grow beyond that. But again, I never take it personally because I'm not going to lose sleep over it. There are so many great people in this sport, especially in this side of the country excuse me, in this side of Europe, where a lot of people here have some very open eyes and very open hearts about what life is like in America, and they would love to travel there one day. And I think
yeah.
it's amazing to see my country through the eyes of other people, like the way they view it. I had no idea before I lived here, and
I also,
that's a
yeah, like, I think it's real interesting, um, what you're saying too, because if you're willing to listen, you immediately like disarm somebody,
exactly,
right?
exactly,
Because like compromise is the most, like, it's the biggest like forgotten thing I feel like among today's society. Like, if we had a
yeah.
marriage that was working the way that we were trying to handle our feelings and all that stuff, in today's society, geez, it'd be one dysfunctional family.
It would be, and so it just reinforces, a point we both agree on is the spearfishing world is not a very big one compared to other sports. But
Right.
when I travel to, like, when I first started traveling in Norway and Denmark, I had very open arms and a huge open heart to the Nordic community, because I knew this was going to be my home for at least a period of my life, and I wanted to treat this place with the same love and respect as I would give my own home. And so I made it a point to accept other people here and their values that might differ from mine, and just having an open, honest mindset goes a whole long way. But you know if you come into a place, like, people that come into the States, we always hope that they would want to take care of it in the way
Right.
that we love our own home. And that includes how you, like, if you're a spearfisher, well, show your new home the same respect like we have. Try and adopt some of our values, especially with conservation or respecting your catch or taking a reasonable amount of fish, or not shooting species that might be, threatened, or whatever those values might be.
Right. Especially in that region. I mean, it's funny in surfing, we just call it respect the locals.
Yeah,
Sometimes that gets taken a little too far, but you're it's I guess as Americans too, we get a bad rap, and I
I
understand
do.
now. I understand
Yeah,
now, like, having traveled enough with certain people, and I could see why that happens, but um, surfing or diving or just in general, when you're in somebody else's home, I don't know, it's just maybe the way I was raised or something. You're a guest in their home, and
Exactly.
yeah, and you know, like we're talking about the traveling thing, it made me kind of take a step back too and realize, like, look at things a little differently. Like when we would go overseas, there'd be like little pockets, right, of Americans like all living together, and then you find out we're all like hanging out together. And my favorite thing to do when I go to places is just try to immerse myself in the culture, learn some of the customs and courtesies. Because you might as well,
Exactly.
like, you're there, you might as well take it all in. You might learn something, right? You might
Oh
learn
yeah.
that, hey, you know what? I don't really like it here. Or, you know what I mean? Like anything. But
Yeah.
what I found was what changed my perspective was that we as human beings is like we try to identify, we want to stick with things that we identify with and we feel like comfort or similar views, like I was saying earlier. And it really did change my perspective on um, when people migrate here to the to our country, like any group of people, and they have, like, for example, in San Francisco, it's like Chinatown, or whatever it is, uh, any other regions like that, right? Like Little Armenia and all these places, you realize that some people, we tend to take it like personally as Americans, like, you know, um, why don't you assimilate in the culture? And I get it. However, I was doing the same thing overseas where like I turn around and I was like, wait a second, like here I am running through the streets with an American flag on 4th of July, and I'm in another country, and we hang out all together all the time together, all of us Americans. We are that group of people in another country. So maybe you should look at it a little differently, that you just naturally tend to hang out with people that you identify with because it's safe. And then you branch out and meet more people, but initially, especially when you come from, you don't know anybody, you just, hey, I can speak the language to you. I can speak English, you can speak English, so let's hang out. Like it's as simple as that. I don't
Yeah.
really know how that applies to spearfishing
Well,
at all, but
well, actually,
I guess so, because right?
it's it's another tribe. It's a
Yeah,
funny, squabbling, just slightly dysfunctional Jerry Springer kind of a tribe. But I mean,
good
it's
times.
our
Yeah,
fam, it's our family. But
right, right.
I mean, I I have just loved the way I've been treated in this part of the world. Especially Denmark has been especially kind to me. The tribe here, the vast
Yeah.
majority of them accepted me very warmly. Um, these are very good people here. They um, they are very different from, say, the American spearfishing world, but yet there's a lot of similarities of just, the joy and stoke of going out and catching and cooking your catch. Like these people, they have the same basic desires we do. They do pride themselves on you know cooking a meal for their family. That's really what it all boils down to, whether you're a diver in Pakistan or you're a diver here.
Right, I love it.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Family.
these people too. This place is not known for its winter sunshine, but the but even though this is one of the coldest places I've ever lived, um, some of the people here have the warmest hearts. They and they do really love clean, fresh fish, and I like to surround myself with that, even though some of their other values are very different from mine.
Right. No, it's
Yeah.
what I find too, you travel, like you realize that uh spearfishing is kind of like a meeting where everybody can like come together, and it doesn't matter when you're underwater, nobody speaks anyways.
Yeah.
Um but you kind of learn that there's very, very few places I've been in this world, and just personally, where I didn't think people were like genuinely just good people. When you take all the political shit out of it all and you sit down and you just talk to many Muslims in different countries, and they got just as much of a kick out of like the fact that I'm a Christian as I did out of their being, Muslim and studying
Yeah.
Islam. And it was just funny, like, oh, well, why is everybody fighting? Like, like it's not personal. Like, it was just interesting. I know it's deeper than that for sure, but it was just kind of cool to go all
Yeah.
these different places where you wouldn't think that you like from based on media and all this stuff where you wouldn't think it was like the most warmest place, but then I was pleasantly surprised, and it wasn't just in the Middle East either. It was all throughout, parts of Africa and all these things like that. But moving on, I guess we should talk about we talked about everything, but I guess being a female, a woman
Oh dear.
starting out. Yes. Just starting out. Like, I'll just open it up right now. Like, I know
Okay.
that, and I'll apologize to, well, no, I'm not going to apologize because I totally understand it. So I'm not going to apologize. But I mean, as a woman trying to get a dive partner who's might happen to be a married man, that's got to be tough because like my situation, like, yeah, no, you're not going out on a boat with um, a younger, a good looking girl in a bikini diving. Yeah, that's not happening, dude. Yeah. And I'm like, what if the situation was reversed? I'm like, fair enough. I get it. Um, but anyways, your own personal experience.
Okay, well, I have a lot of them and many years. So when I was first starting to learn freediving and spearfishing, and I mean, I was snorkeling and holding my breath to find catfish under rocks and rivers when I was a kid, so I don't know if that's the first time I started freediving, but I mean, I could hold my breath for a long time, but when you're a kid and you're just starting to do, you don't even think about these issues. And then all of a sudden, this girl grows up to be a young lady and a young woman. And I just remember, like, it wasn't as simple as asking somebody, "Hey, can I tag along anymore?" And this was before Instagram. This was before Facebook got really popular in spearfishing. Like, I'm embarrassed to say I've been on Facebook since 2004, but nobody was talking about spearfishing in 2004 on Facebook that I'm aware of. This is like that we still had the free dive list and and
Yep.
strange spearfishing forums of which I shall not name.
No, we all know.
Um,
Yeah.
but they, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, but they do rhyme with beer board. So so I just, those were some strange days, and I do remember, like, uh, I was in a relationship at the time, of course, but technically, you know, a single unmarried young woman in her 20s, blonde in California with an athletic body. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, it's not
So
happening.
so
Yeah.
that it was, honestly, it was a big challenge, and the guys that did want to give me a chance, and this was before all these women's groups existed. There, I think I could count on one hand the number of female divers I knew on the entire West Coast. That's how limited we were and how much we were connected. So, and now women are all over the place, but back then it was a serious problem.
I
Like,
can believe it because just even the men, like there wasn't that many people, and we didn't have
no,
a way to really like reach out and connect with everybody other than like you see some dude while you're diving. But like
right.
I can't imagine for a woman there must have been like five. Like, you know.
There was very few of us, and I cannot tell you the insane amount of crazy girlfriends, wives, and no, some really aggressive people that were very hostile to me because I wanted to have some kind of mentorship in the sport. And, you know, and eventually I just, of course, I joined a local dive club, and that made things a bit easier. But even within that dive club, despite 10 years of loyal membership, sexual discrimination in the boys club is still a very real thing, and
Yeah.
I don't care what, people try and sugarcoat it. You're not going to tell me that, I mean, literally, even after 10 years, I had hostility from the wife of one of the dive club members. It unexplained, completely surreal. Like, I thought you knew me, and I dove with her husband many times. There's, of course, no inappropriate behavior there, But even after 10 years, out of nowhere, if you're a woman in this sport, you will get attacked. It doesn't matter how loyal you are. It doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how modest you are. Being a
Right.
female in this sport is just not easy. And so I made the choice to leave that club for many reasons, but sexual discrimination was a huge one, and the kind of treatment that I received in that place.
So you're saying sexual discrimination, not necessarily from the men, or was it just triggered like the men did it because of the situation, maybe at home or something? Like, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. But who knows where the emotional trigger lies? It's drama I don't need in my life. I'm serious. It's,
Yeah.
save your drama for your mama, because, I really, I'm, I was fresh out of my doctorate program. I didn't need any of that, you know, college fraternity drama.
Do
It
you
really is.
think that it's unique to Southern California? Or, I'm sorry, do you think that
No,
it's
no.
more prevalent in Southern California? Just curious.
I think it is a bit more prevalent in Southern California, but I'd venture to say that Florida has a good heap of that going
Oh
on.
yeah. Oh, for sure.
Um,
Yeah, that makes
but
sense.
I'll say that I don't really see a huge amount of that here in Northern Europe, but I think a lot of that's because there's just very few people here.
So
Um,
that's a good point because I thought about this because I had a friend that came from Guam and moved here. And he was like,
yeah,
dude, it's so hard to find anybody to dive with. Like nobody will even respond back to me on Instagram or whatever. He's like,
yeah,
it's weird because when you go to those smaller places, it's like they just found a new best friend.
yep.
And I was talking to him about it. I go, you know what I think it is? And I actually wrote about it in my book that I was making right now. Who knows when it'll be ready, but about the dive culture that exists in Southern, Central, and Northern California. And I noticed in Southern California, it's very more clicky and exclusive because
Oh
there
yeah,
are so many people. And
yep,
if you just let anybody in, you could let I mean, everyone's different, right? And like not everybody clicks together. Like maybe someone has a different way they dive. Maybe someone's just an asshole and you don't want to be around them. Well, then that's just like one of those things where it's like, oh, I'm not going to open myself up to that again. So you tend to be more exclusive just based on and you go with people that you know rather than when you go to those smaller islands and groups, I feel like you kind of know everybody immediately right off the bat, or it's just it's a matter of necessity because there's so few of you. So you
I
kind of
think
overlook things a little bit more.
maybe I think I think there's some other complexity there. I agree with
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
but I think that relating back to the female's perspective,
Uh huh.
um, I don't know too many men. I have thousands of friends worldwide,
Uh
many friends worldwide. I don't know too many men, even of that selection, that really enjoy being outshot by a girl.
huh.
Okay, there is that.
Really?
It really boils down to some very simple things. Okay,
Okay.
men are instinctually, you know, they want to be the best hunter in the group. That's a very basic drive and an instinct. And when you see a creature, a female, that's
Uh
supposed
huh.
to be back in the cave, barefoot, pregnant, and cooking for you, you see her load her own gun and shoot a bigger fish than you, that does something to the psyche of a man. And very few men really work beyond that. There are a lot of great men in this world. I have met some amazing men that they were raised by strong mothers to raise them with respect, and they just don't have these dominance issues. But by and large, I've noticed that in cultures in the world where women are highly sexualized in media, there's more of this cliquish behavior and more of these dominance issues. For example, and maybe this is just me, you know, blowing hot wind out of my skirt, but there's something to it, because I just see this pattern over and over again. Let's say
Okay.
you're a beautiful young girl in your 20s and you know what, you don't have a really serious career yet, you're not married with kids, you know what, rock that thong, put it on the internet. But for every action there is a consequence. And when women are encouraged to do this kind of stuff, they're rewarded for this behavior, well then that becomes like a normal thing in that sport culture, right? So then how is a married man gonna look at a female like this and take her seriously? You know, I'm just being serious and honest. And
No,
how
yeah.
is the wife of that man going to feel in that situation? So these are things I've noticed pop up really strongly in the last 5 years, especially with Instagram really booming with the spearfishing culture. And then in the States, we have a lot of pressure for women. Like there's, you know, social media has connected us in ways that we've never been connected before. And that is a wonderful thing, but it also has some dark sides.
Uh-huh.
One of the dark sides I see is that, especially in the States and the Western cultures, we have a lot of sexualization of our women athletes. Okay, so girls are encouraged to show lots of skin because, hey, you're going to get a free gun, you're going to get a wetsuit, you know, and then other girls see that and they're like, oh yeah, well I can do it better. And then you just see this, like, it perpetuates itself. And then pretty soon, like, you know, if you ask younger generation divers now, hey, do you know who the first women's team to go to Worlds was? They can't tell you that because they only know the famous Instagram divers who show their butt cracks. And so, all right,
I'm
and
laughing because it's 100% true as you're talking. I'm
well,
like, that's
it
me.
is,
I don't know who the
it's, and there it is, and it's just reality. Okay, this is now
Yeah,
the strange, but you as a married man and you have a daughter, correct?
I have two. Yeah.
You have two daughters. Okay, so I don't have children yet, but I am a married woman, and my behavior is definitely guided more strongly now by the fact that I am married, because I see how things that if I put it out on the internet, I have to think, well, if I had a daughter and she was watching, how would I feel about that? Would I want her mimicking me? Would I want her
Right.
having, 3,000 likes on Instagram from guys who are fapping off in their mother's basement? Like,
Well, so
I,
so on the flip side, on another side of that, from a
I mean,
male
really,
perspective, from a
yeah,
father's perspective, I would
yeah,
say, do I want my daughter being married to someone who does that? Right. So if I were to
exactly.
go overseas and cheat on my wife all the time, do I want my daughter to look at something like that, and be married to someone like me? Like, right? Like, I just look at it as every single thing that I've ever done in my life.
Hmm.
Um, I'm an open book. I would tell my kids that I've done, right? And
Right.
so by thinking like that, you try to minimize the amount of dumb shit you do. But now,
Exactly.
now it's bad because, right, everybody has a platform, right? Like,
Hmm.
I'm sure there'd be pictures of me hammered walking through New York City, doing dumb shit. I could go on and on and on about all kinds of shit. But I mean, like, that would end up, today I could have put in my drunken stupor on my Instagram or my Facebook or something like that. And then
Yeah,
have to justify that to my kids, my son and my two daughters. And then when they come home drunk, say, yeah, you can't do that. Like, you're full of shit, dad. Um, and so, yeah, that's why my wife is a great example for my kids, and I try to be, as best as I can.
hmm,
But I think that's not unique to me. I mean, I just think that I hope that most people kind of look at that, so we can put out some quality people out there, or people that are just thinking of, like you said, consequences, right? And impacts your reactions. There's always an equal or what is it? An equal opposite reaction, or whatever the hell it is. But anyways, it's been a while.
absolutely. And the universe obeys those laws. And I
100%.
just think, and to relate that to your question of, how that compares to my perspective as a woman when I was first starting out. And versus now, I would say that the issues that I had when I first started and the challenges there, those definitely still exist for other girls. But I think it's actually worse for girls now, even though we're more connected, we have a lot more access to the sport. There's also a lot more potholes in the road from my perspective, because girls now have to navigate, well, you know, if I'm going to be recognized in this sport, do I have to show my body in order to be sponsored or supported or recognized for my efforts? Do I have to, what is it that I have to do? Why does she have 1 million fans and I've got 300,
Right.
So
And
how
does
do
it
you,
does
how do
it
you,
really, yeah, and the problem is, does it matter, right? Like,
does it
it
matter? And
does
does it,
because she's reaching and influencing a million people. So it does in the greater good of things, but in the grand scheme of things, who gives a shit?
exactly. So, and then you have to, like try and tell these new divers about a world that is extremely strange to me, because unfortunately I see it in a lot of different sports, whether it's women's tennis,
Right.
where um, women are frequently given, no matter what sport it is, and there's been many studies on this, and many Olympic women athletes have commented on this, not just me. Um, it's quite true that media attention is consistently across the board focusing on women for their appearances rather than their raw stats, right? Their performance stats. They're
Right.
given more they're given more limelight for their looks.
Well, and
And
one, go
whereas
ahead,
the
sorry.
opposite is true for a man, right? You can have
Right.
a butt ugly dude who shoots like nobody else. Like he is an underwater sniper, and that dude will get lots of fame. Everybody knows who he is.
Yeah.
But he could break a mirror if he looked at it too hard. You know what I'm saying? Like
I think it's true to a degree. I think it's true probably more in spearfishing, but if you look at, like, let's say,
women's
Hollywood,
tennis.
oh, good God. Um, yeah, we could talk
Anna
about that.
Kournikova, come on.
Eugenie Bouchard.
Yeah,
I can
exactly.
name, my wife loves to watch tennis, women's tennis, and, just tennis in general.
Hmm.
And, you know, from a male perspective, like, we went to one of the events here, in Costa, I can't even remember now. But I remember, like, I as a man, I find tall, athletic build women, I guess most people, some people, blonde hair attractive, right? And so I remember my wife and I, we're pretty open with each other. Like, um, we're human beings, and we're walking up this trail here, or we're walking up somewhere, and then there's this young woman, tennis player, with like quads, like, that she could probably just, I mean, squat, 350, I don't know, and coming down the stairs, and you just see, like, quad, and she's tall and young and beautiful, and I just didn't even say anything, and I just looked over at my wife, and we started laughing, and
Yeah.
it was just funny. And it's like, yeah, that's okay, that's not. But I feel like in Hollywood, like, if you look at Hollywood too, you've got, you ever pay attention when you're watching these shows, you're like, dude, is there any, like, unattractive people on this show? Like everyone here is, like, beautiful, and they sell, like, this image, like, everyone's beautiful, right? Like, especially soap operas. And then, but I do think for men, it's a lot easier for a men to be like a Tom Arnold or whoever, like, overweight dude as a personality, right? Maybe not the
Yeah.
most attractive guy. John C. Riley is the person that comes to mind, but there's no way in hell that it's gonna happen. There's gonna be like two, maybe, women that would be able to pull that off. Um, and, compared to the frequency of men, that men are able to do that. So, I mean, I think you're right. What you're saying is true.
There's a
Um,
huge amount of pressure on girls, especially these days in spearfishing, and I'm just so happy that my career just doesn't that I have a scientific career. I have a
right.
clinical career that just does not depend on whether or not I even do this. And so my fulfillment of enjoyment in life doesn't hinge upon social media or any of these things.
Yeah.
I'm it's a hobby for me. The stuff I post online is like
Right.
I don't post on Instagram every time I have a bowel movement at the gym. Okay, like I have a huge. I really do enjoy the privacy of my life, but there
Yes.
are there are females I see, and it saddens me a bit that they live and die by what people think about them on the internet. And it's sad because if your sense of self-worth is really defined by strangers you will never meet on the
Attention.
internet,
Right.
then I really encourage these women to seek some professional cognitive help,
So
because it's there's so much more to life than that.
it's funny. I always say a joke to my friends um that partake in anabolic enhancers, I guess you could say.
Yeah,
And it's like, dude, you'd probably save a lot of money if you would just go to a counselor than keep spending money on this shit that, like, you're not a professional football player. You're not, there's not really a need. It's just clearly
no,
like from a vanity standpoint. I was like, dude,
right.
and you're trying to, what happens when you reach that 300 mark? What happens when you do this? You're going to still be you. So you might want to just save the money on the juice and just go and to a counselor. You'd probably be better off in the long run. And as sad as it is, as funny as it is, and I make jokes, give them shit all the time about it. It's true, you know.
Yeah, I agree. And I think in terms of, I think one of the topics I think you mentioned that you wanted to address was, what issues do I see women face worldwide? And I think that social media can be a huge double-edged sword. And I think that social media can be used to either enhance or damage women equality in the world. It depends on how we use it. So I don't think the hypersexualization of women is empowerment. I think it is damaging. I think that celebrating the beauty of your body is fine, but looking like a cat in heat all the time is not empowerment, and it doesn't help. And actually, it doesn't just damage you, it really hurts the chances of other women who want to have a chance at maybe going out on boats and charters
Right.
without feeling these strange social pressures or hate and jealousy. I think that makes it worse for other women. And so, no, you're not empowering women. You just look like an idiot when you do these
So
things.
yeah, and I'll say this message. I mean, I make jokes about this all the time, actually. Like, women empowerment. Don't be confused.
Yeah,
Like you say, oh, women empower. Like, people say that, and I
yeah, they
crack
do.
up and I go, well, I guess strippers are the most empowered women in the world, then, huh? Like, based on what you're saying is women empowerment and what you're displaying. I was like, well, then
Right.
girls, go ahead and get empowered all you want. Like, to a meathead guy, it's like, sure, yeah, go get empowered. Ha 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 ha. You're like laughing at him, you know? It's like, you
Yeah,
don't get it, do you? Like,
you really don't get it
no, no.
because they don't hold the power anymore. They,
Yeah. What does
you've
showing
given
your
the
ass have to do with any, like, can you imagine
is
if guys acted the same, like, thought that? I'm not saying all women, so please don't, like, get me.
no, no, no,
I'm
you're
just
good.
saying, like, if dudes had pictures of them with thongs and stuff and said manpower, like, you would be like, what the fuck you talking about? You know?
Well,
Um,
if they did that to the same, like if we all want to be equal, right? That's the big discussion these days with our new president and the things he's doing
yeah,
about equality. We're all talking about equality. Well, if men acted the exact same way as women and put, you know, pictures of men in butt floss on the internet, to the same degree that a lot of girls are doing,
right.
I
Nobody wants to see that,
my
but yeah.
nobody wants to see that. I You know what? And quite frankly, I've had to really unfollow a lot of spearfishing feeds because my news feed started looking like a Hustler magazine. It no longer looked like Sports Illustrated. It looked like straight up Hustler. And I was like,
Yeah.
I can't have people at work thinking God knows what if they look at my phone. And so I'm like, this is very strange to me. I hope the world goes back to normal someday. So what I do is, I don't, I'm very selective about who I mentor in this sport because I don't have a lot of time and my personal time is very private. So when I do mentor somebody, especially a girl, I try to steer them away from social media pressure and just focus on, the essential essence of what you're doing in spearfishing. Like the bottom line is, you know, forget about, it sounds bad to say this, but forget about trying to prove to the world and women empowerment. Just focus on hunting techniques, cooking your catch, and build from there,
So it's funny
you
you
know?
said, yeah. So I told my daughter this, right? Because she's on a basketball team, um, and she's empowered sports, right? Um, and well, I was talking to her about it just in general because that topic's pretty common actually in our house. But with everybody yelling empowerment, 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 just fucking be empowered. Like, don't talk about it, because if you carry yourself without having to talk, it's like the empty wagon makes the most noise, right? So
Exactly.
it's like, you want to be empowered? Well, don't tell me about being empowered. Show me. Like, go down, like like in spearfishing, right? Like, and I don't really, I mean, just be a badass diver. You don't have to out dive me
No,
or I don't care about that. I mean, there's no problem. Hats off to you. There's probably a shit ton of people that are. I know there is. But I'm saying, like, be a legit diver. Uh, cool. Like, I can tell you the women that I know off the top of my head that I immediately like, she's a badass. She's legit. And it's like, that's immediately what I think. Maybe I don't think I'm unique, but maybe I'm a little older. So I think like that. But it's like, there's those two categories you fall into, right? Like,
right.
social media whore, not whore, like, I mean, but just a social media,
No,
like,
no, you can say whore because a lot of them are paid to do that, which is the legal definition of a
right.
whore.
But I'm not speaking specifically like just because they're females, but I'm just saying, like,
that that
as
can
there was
apply
a,
to men too.
yeah, there was a time when I would call myself a social media whore. But like now, I guess, but or a legit spear fisherman, like Sherry Day kind of comes to mind.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
she's just like, she's legit.
She is a true legend, and everybody throws around the word legend now like it's
Yeah, I
water.
know. Yeah.
And it's like, well, you've just diluted its meaning so much, but she is the definition of, a true leader and a legend in the
Yeah.
sport.
Yeah. I mean,
And
that's just right.
it's,
She's a
there's
doer.
no, there's no disputing that.
Right.
And she, you know, I have a lot of respect for women like her, the OGs that really like, and a lot of her records still hold. Brett, I almost beat her cobia record this winter. Not by No, not because I like intended to.
Right.
I just happened to shoot this amazing fish and one of the guys in the boat was like, "Oh my god." And I was like, "Oh, I'm just happy to have a winter cobia cuz their meat get all fatty. Oh, it's the
Yep.
most amazing thing." And I mean, it was shy of her record by 2 pounds. But rather than being bummed out, it made me really, really respect the fact that I was like, you know what? Her cobia record has held so many years. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, the
That's so
record.
cool.
We can talk about records too. It's funny because I was saying very publicly, like, that my buddy John and I was like, man, we got to get a record. That'd be really, really cool. And not, I guess, just the more you spearfish, the more you realize the significance uh, to the record has nothing to do with the fish. Like, to me,
Yeah,
it's to me, like, I shot this weekend, I shot a 31-pound Gulf grouper, right? And
that's a nice one.
yeah, and it's funny because I was like, my friend was like, that's a leopard, or we were going back and forth, right, about it. And you know look, bear with it. And we were going back and forth about it. People were probably like, you don't even know your own fish. Yeah, sure, whatever, man. And I was like, well, if it's a leopard, then it's a new world record, right? And it was funny because, so I looked it up. I was like, well, I probably should figure that out. Like, might kind of be cool. And, and then I'm like, no, it's a golf, dude. But what I realized was that knowing that it's a world record or not didn't really change the way that I felt about having shot it,
Exactly.
because to me it was my world record, like my record. Like, it was a personal best for me, and I was just so stoked. And I didn't even think we had a scale at the time, like a good one. And I was like, well, who gives a shit? I'm just kind of curious to see what it is, and then we got a good one. But it was just like, it really showed, like, to me, it's more about it's a personal thing. It's about getting a personal world record, not showing the world that, oh, I'm the
Right.
best, because you spent years in the water. And everyone knows the world records is time in the water, and it's just luck sometimes. So it's more about like, wow, I'm so badass, and it's more about, wow, I'm a really lucky person. This is really awesome. I
It's
don't To me.
from I totally agree with you, and I wish, and I really encourage people, especially girls starting out in this sport. And it's something I kind of wanted to mention because, you know, I've had a lot of young women and women close to my age, approach me. You know, I'm not like, you know, I don't exactly have like a million followers, but I've had a lot of people approach me about world records. And one of the first things I asked them, I was like, well, why do you want it so bad? Because, well, because I want to show people. And I'm like, one of the hallmarks I see now in these newer divers of the Insta generation, I call them Insta divers,
Right.
because nobody cared about it that much until Instagram came along.
Yeah.
Instagram and social media just all of a sudden, like for me, every time I've got a world record, it would just happen to be a byproduct of whatever I was doing. It really wasn't like,
a hundred
oh,
percent.
I'm doing it just because of this. It's like, well, if it happens, great. If it doesn't, okay, who cares? I just got a great fish. But
Right.
there seems to be this really disturbing trend of, especially new women divers, who all they want to ask me is, well, I want to beat this tournament, and I feel like I need to break this record. I'm like, well, why? Who cares? I don't mean to be a jerk about it, but what makes you think you're entitled to this? Like, I'm serious. Like, what?
Yeah, no,
Why
I
don't you
know.
just? Why don't? I mean, I even had one girl, and I'm not gonna mention people's names, but I could tell by her posts, she was new, she was learning, and this is great. But her shot placement in her fish left a lot to be desired. Fine. We
Yeah.
all start off somewhere.
Guilty. Yeah.
I'm not exactly like,
Yeah.
we've all gut shot a fish or just whatever it is,
Yeah.
but
Gut shot glory, man.
if yeah, exactly, at, butt shot McGee. But if
Yeah.
you are still in that phase where you're still figuring out your equipment,
Right.
and you don't quite understand how to even predict dive conditions yet, what makes you think that you're entitled to this? Why I encourage young girls, like, especially, I don't know why they have such a, they feel like that's the only way they prove themselves in the sport. I'm like, why do you care what other people think? Just go
Exactly.
out and focus on your hunting techniques first, please. Go take a safety class. Go learn how to free dive safely. Go learn how to improve your shot placement. Record your shots with cameras. And then if a world record comes, then you've earned it. But don't tell me that, I think it was in one women's group where I read some girl posted, hey ladies, look at all these spearfishing records. I think they all need to be updated. And I'm like, I was just taken aback by that. I'm like, you know, I
Oh,
just thought to
meaning like you
myself,
guys need to go out and break them.
like they weren't significant, or that, you
Oh,
know,
wow.
that was
Wow.
the flavor of the post, like they needed to be updated. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I read it to be one of the
Okay.
most arrogant comments I've ever read, because there's no mentorship in that statement.
Well,
There's
and it's
no
pretty
leadership.
disrespectful towards everybody that was on the
Like,
list, to be honest,
exactly,
because yeah.
like Sherry Day. Like, all right, for the longest time, and I think she still is the one woman on that list. If you look at all the IUSA records, there's European spearfishing world records too. There's several other organizations that record this stuff. But of the
Uh,
IUSA ones, I think she still has the most records of any female that has been recorded on this side of the planet. So,
yeah. And they're
a lot
legit
of
records. Like
they're
these,
they
that's the
are
biggest
legit.
thing I see. Like legit, like holy shit. It wasn't like she was the first one to submit it, you know?
No,
Um,
and
yeah.
even if you're the first one, like a lot of her records have stood for many, many years.
Right.
Like I've like and you have to respect that. And I don't think it's a healthy trend for women to be speaking about, the women that came before them in such a way, because it's gosh, there's a million words that come to my mind, but
Yeah, I know. I
it
think
just
everyone
doesn't
knows.
promote it just doesn't promote a good vibe for the sport, because it shows zero respect for the women that came before.
Yeah, it's
And
interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
it's and so I think that I would love to see women actually respect each other a bit more in that way, in that, okay, if you exceed another woman's record, how about instead of saying, oh well, I smashed this, how about you give some respect and honor to the woman that you just exceeded.
Uh,
I
I couldn't agree with you more.
What?
Thinking about that, like, uh, I thought, okay, I'm gonna go for this. I think I'm gonna try to target this fish and try to get this record this year. And I have a spot,
Yeah,
and it goes to this whole thing of like, it's not the record thing is funny because it's such a journey, right? Like for me, I like trying to explore places, and so my dream would be to explore a place
yeah,
where there's world record fish, not because of a number, but to find like a place that's like, obviously fish migrate, most of them, but to find somewhere to put in all the effort to do the research, to do all this, and then have it pay off. And that's what that fish represents. Not,
yes. Not that
my
you beat
Johnson is bigger
somebody.
than everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah,
And so, and then knowing that the guy before you was just as stoked on his fish and went through that same process for the most part, or just was insanely lucky. And
right.
telling that guy, hey man, awesome record. I almost feel kind of like an ass for doing this to you, but I'm going to submit this world record, you know. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but the fish thing is like, I have a spot we were just talking about this weekend. There's a certain spot where there's like supposedly like 15-pound calicos and stuff. And I was like,
Oh,
oh
wow.
man, like, really? Really? Yeah, this is the rumor that I'm hearing. I'm like, let's go there and check it out, not for the sake of, but just the whole thing. Like, and
Yeah.
um yeah, I think that's where the record thing is really kind of funny. You have the competitiveness of it all, but really what's competitive? I mean, when you spend enough time in the ocean, you know that a good portion of it, a lot of it is luck. And then a lot of it is putting yourself in the right situation, meaning either spend a ton of time in the water, or putting yourself in an environment where the chances of you landing that would be higher, or seeing a fish that size would be higher than if you were in your own backyard. So there's so much to it that is deeper than a number. And if you,
I agree.
I would say that if you're looking for it just for a number, then you just don't get it,
Mm-mm. I agree. Like,
male or female. Like,
for any diver, I think if if you're only killing a fish because you want the world record, then you're doing it for the wrong reason. You should be fishing because you want to put meat on the table. And if it happens to be a world record, then fine. So be it.
right.
There's
Yes.
um there's several fish I've shot that I never submitted for world record. I shot a 35-pound halibut, I think back in
Uh-huh.
like 2010, 2011. Never
Nice.
submitted it. It just really wasn't on my, I didn't care at the time.
What was the length of
Never,
the halibut? I'm curious. Did you
oh
measure
God,
it?
the thing was, yeah, it was, hold on, that was, it was 10 years, over 10 years ago. Hold on, let me think. And it was on one of the islands.
Well, I was at
I
work.
wanna,
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
wanna say over 36 inches. I don't remember the
Yeah.
exact length. But at the time, I was more focused on cutting that fish up and making sure the meat was dealt with properly.
Right.
And I did a scale was not an option at the time because it was an islands trip.
Yeah,
And
it makes sense.
I'm not gonna waste the meat on a 35-pound halibut. Just like my lingcod, I'm not gonna let that fish just go to waste because I need an ego boost on, you know what I mean? It
That's a
just
lot of
isn't it
meat. I
didn't
know exactly what you're saying.
yeah.
I
So I
understand
just
people's need to like, well, this looks like it's close. Maybe I should, in a way to kind of memorialize the fish. I get that. Like, I know people that shot like, 300-pound bluefin and they want to like, I don't know if I should bleed it out. It might be a world record. Maybe I should. I get that. I get that. Yeah, it's just, again, everybody has their moral code as long as they have good intentions behind it,
yeah. So that's where I stand on those fish.
Cool.
Just world records in general, like, you know, the one record I submitted with no guts was a lingcod on a pole spear. And I was on a camping trip and I was hours away from a location with a scale, and at the time I had no certified scale. I had my little Berkeley cheesy thing I got from Walmart.
Yep.
And
I used
and
that
I
this
just like
weekend.
and I just, I was like, and it was a solo hunt I did in a very remote area. And a friend that I met back where we were camping, I looked at him and I said, dude, I just do not want to leave guts in this fish. Just I was like, I know this would be a really cool pole spear record, but I just want good meat. It's a lingcod. It's one of my favorite fish in the entire world to eat, and I was not going to ruin it.
Right.
So I absolutely took the guts out and I weighed a gutted fish. And if I ever shoot another really big tuna,
Yeah.
I'm absolutely gonna take the guts out and all the blood and everything, and I do not care.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to beat me with a fish with guts in it, I do not care. I just know that
Yeah.
that fish will mean more to me as a gutted fish that was taken care of properly, because I think, everybody's all that pressure to get a world record, or just feed your ego that way. It always comes at the detriment of that fish.
Well, yeah, because the
So,
thing died. Regardless, the thing is dead. So why did you shoot it, right? Did you shoot it to be a designated trophy hunter?
right.
And then that is it, right? Because I think there's kind of like combos nowadays. Uh, or yeah, do you do it just because it just happened to happen? It's just okay, cool.
Yeah. So like my cod in Denmark, it was the
Uh-huh.
first record to ever be submitted from this country for an IUSA record. And also
Nice.
it was also listed on the European World Record simultaneously because they automatically accept IUSA records.
Uh-huh.
But that fish, I had the luxury of having not only a really good scale in my shop, but I had, the ability to quickly get the guts out of those things. And you do not want to leave guts in cods very long. Any cod. I, you know, they
Right.
do have a chance. Just like our rockfish in California, they can have worms.
Right.
So the faster you clean them, the better the meat, and that's what it's all about, right? Dinner.
Correct.
But that one, like, I'm sure there's tons of people that have shot bigger fish than that, but who cares? You know, I was the first girl that bothered to shoot one that big and also record it, and
Yeah.
I hope that other girls will feel brave enough to do that, you know. And I don't care if they exceed mine. Just go for it.
Well,
That's the
the
whole point
thing
of it all.
is, the funny thing is, like, hearing about you submitting the fish with no guts, right?
Yeah.
If I were to be looking at the IUSA records and I clicked on and I saw there was a fish there that say you or anybody, anybody, were to put up there with no guts, I'd be like, damn, dude, that's like a new ethical standard. Shit. Like, you're a better
Mhm.
man than I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
But again, it goes back to setting the good example. Of course, you know what you mean.
Yeah.
You did it.
Oh,
But it
I
goes
totally
back to
get it.
setting a good example, right? Like, you're like, damn, his integrity is so high, or her integrity is like solid, or integrity, but it's just like her value system is so important, or she's not going to sell out, or he's not going to sell out for the Instagram gods and stuff. Um, wow, that's a great. I mean, thank you for being a good leader like that.
Oh,
That's pretty awesome.
I'm not a perfect person, and believe me, I love getting older because I have more open eyes to learn more and more. And I've I appreciate your words, but I'm always learning.
Yeah,
you know,
no, when
and
you get
I
your black belt in jujitsu, they just say now you can start to learn. Now you really start
exactly
learning. You know?
exactly.
Yeah,
My only hope now is I'm, especially now that I'm married, I take that very seriously, and I think about all my actions, either in my sports and my career. They're guided by something more than just me at this point. It
right.
sounds funny. It sounds funny
No,
and
I
strange
know.
to think, but like I almost view it as if, well, if I have a son or a daughter someday, I would like to look at them, and I don't care if they say, "Oh, mom was a badass." I would like to
Right.
say, "Well, you know what? Mom made some good decisions."
Yeah.
The only real badass diver in this world is the one that comes back to shore safely.
Right. Well,
No,
Kelsey,
it's
I gotta
yeah.
run, and I know like we've been chatting up quite a bit, but I mean everything we cut. Oh, this is really good. And this is a different one than I've usually done, just based off
Okay.
of covering more than just spearfishing. It kind of relates to everything. But thank you so much for like being strung along by me, like trying to reschedule stuff, and I
Oh,
appreciate
you're
your
fine.
time.
I appreciate you working with the time zone drama, because it is definitely different working from my business on this side of the world.
Oh, correct.
And
Yeah.
I can't wait to come back to the States here very, very soon. So,
Cool. Yeah.
all right,
All
Brett,
right.
thank you again,
Thank you, doctor.
and we'll chat soon. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Good night.